Luck and topography would spare his home from Durian's worst.
I already cleaned up this house, so now it's just now getting materials, finding ways of what I could do to make a couple of dollars to help patch things up until things start to fall in line. That's the Bahamian spirit, we're strong. I born here, I ain't going nowhere. My family was here from 1700s. That's way back, and we still have the archer title from then till now. So I ain't got nowhere to go.
The 25-foot storm surge that fell short of Linden's home on a hill devastated the neighborhood below. The Mud was a shanty town built on top of an old lake that flooded into a mountain of mud. It was the most vulnerable spot to ride out the storm, and it's where most of the people died.
You're coming into the ground zero of Hurricane Durian.
Wayne Neely is a Bahamian meteorologist who's written 14 books on island hurricanes. He's considered the foremost hurricane hunter in this part of the world. He's come to Marsh Harbor to hunt down Durian's DNA.
As we walk through this, you hear the crunch. There's a stench here that smells like...
It's unmistakable, yes.
It smells like death.
Yes, it is. And it's from dead bodies. You also have dead animals, the dogs, the cats. There was no match because they couldn't go anywhere. This area was flooded, it was engulfed in water.
After 30 years of covering hundreds of storms, Wayne knew this hurricane would be different. Durian's lethal storm surge charged several miles inland. So when the storm arrived, he felt as if he was carrying the weight of the nation on his shoulders, delivering a catastrophic forecast to his country, his friends, and his family.
I knew what comes along with that, a Category 5 hurricane, one of the strongest the region has ever seen, and the strongest the Bahamas has ever seen. And I knew that beneath that storm, beneath that image, there was going to be great devastation in my country. I knew then that the death toll is going to be significant.
Beneath the devastation and heartbreak, Wayne looks for Durian's atmospheric paper trail. The intense tornado-like debris and nuclear bomb landscape is unmistakable. Cat 5 storm signatures are like no other. Wayne's post-hurricane analysis is invaluable. He carefully captures it all, tracing Durian's steps and peeling away the layers.
There was very little wind shear occurring with the storm to weaken the storm. The waters were extremely warm. It was warmer than normal. I expected it to be a strong storm, but I'd never expect it to be a Category 5 intensity storm. I don't think no one did.
Durian would deliver a series of surprises leading up to landfall. First, it threaded a needle between mountainous Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, keeping its lethal core intact and over warm water for days. The eye would then recenter about 75 miles north, making forecast tracks even less reliable. Long-range computer models use satellite data, but that's limited and data poor. So when a hurricane is far from land, getting accurate tracks is harder, especially when there's been a significant shift in the hurricane. But there would be one more surprise: the weakest link in tropical forecasting, hurricane intensity. Durian rapidly intensified from 150 miles an hour to an explosive 185 miles an hour in just 9 hours, a rate never seen before in an Atlantic storm this powerful. Those 185-mile-per-hour winds, equivalent to a 10-mile-wide EF3 tornado. It bulldozed huge swaths of Abaco and Grand Bahama Islands. Durian's wall of water reached miles beyond the mud. Wayne arrives at this Anglican church in Abaco, a designated evacuation center. Durian rushed through these walls with a 5-foot storm surge.
It must have been terrifying for them. Imagine that for 30 hours battling the storm, battling the water up to waist level, and you also had the winds, the torrential rainfall along with that, so that must have been terror for them.
That torrential rain became another one of Durian's deadly signatures. Estimates put rain totals over 35 inches. And the forecast would become a real nail-biter as the Bermuda high that was steering Durian shifted east, collapsing the steering currents, slowing down Durian. A dead man's walk across the Bahamas.
Even with all the technology that we have in play, with hurricane hunters flying all the time in and out of these hurricanes, truth is, they still can surprise us. They still can create this level of devastation like Hurricane Durian did. But now there's an opportunity to change the rulebook itself and perhaps fly drones at high altitudes to get ahead of these hurricanes.
And forecasters need all the help they can get. While hurricane track forecasts are getting better each year, predicting the rate at how quickly major hurricanes can intensify is still not well understood. But there's plenty of data that shows big storms are becoming more frequent. 2019 is the fourth consecutive year a Category 5 hurricane has formed in the Atlantic Basin. That's never happened since records began in 1851. Durian tied the hurricane of 1935 as the strongest landfalling hurricane in this part of the world. And there's no record of a Category 5 hurricane lashing a landmass for nearly 24 hours like Durian. Forecasters would like to track hurricanes in real time to provide more accurate data on steering patterns. Such continuous testing of the atmosphere could detect the tiniest of wobbles that could determine who needs to evacuate and when.
We cannot lift the Bahamas up and take it elsewhere. All indications are the hurricanes will become more frequent, and some cases argue that it will become more intense. And Durian is actually showing that these hurricanes are becoming stronger and more frequent. And it's us as meteorologists to pay close attention to climate change.
Island living after Durian is far from the perfect postcard these islands once represented. Hurricane survivors must adapt and change themselves if they still want their ticket to paradise. Now, tough questions about sustainable island living have moved to the front burner. The Bahamian coat of arms perhaps more poignant than ever before, charging to move forward, upward, onward, together. Even after the devil storms into town. For MyRadar, I'm Chief Digital Meteorologist Leslie Hudson in the Bahamas.
Hey there, I'm meteorologist Mike Linden for MyRadar. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Don't forget to click the notification bell. That way you always know whenever we drop a new video or whenever we go live. Now, the 2019 hurricane season is well underway, but we wanted to take a look back at one of the most powerful storms on record in the Atlantic, Category 5 Hurricane Durian. Let's get into it. We begin on August 27th. When Durian had already strengthened to a tropical storm near the Lesser Antilles, where Durian briefly made landfall in St. Lucia. At this time, National Hurricane Center meteorologists expected the storm to come very close to the island of Hispaniola and Puerto Rico. Durian had other plans as the storm missed both islands. The very next day, Durian strengthened to a Category 1 hurricane with maximum sustained winds at 74 miles per hour. By missing both islands, Durian had nothing but warm, open ocean ahead of it. On August 30th, the eye of Durian began to form, a sure sign of strengthening. Durian was a Category 3 by the afternoon. By September 1st, Durian had become a Category 5 hurricane, with the Bahamas in the line of fire. That same day, NHC meteorologists found 180 mile-per-hour sustained winds within Durian, as well as a minimum pressure of 913 millibars, making Durian the strongest hurricane in modern record-keeping to impact the Bahamas. Later that day, Hurricane Durian made landfall on Great Abaco Island in the Bahamas with sustained winds at 185 miles per hour. Category 5, by the way, is anything above 157. Again, Durian at 185 at this time. Wind gusts at 220 miles per hour and a central pressure of 911 millibars. With these readings, Durian stamped its spot in history, tying the Labor Day hurricane of 1935 for the strongest landfalling Atlantic hurricane ever. Needless to say, Durian was not kind to Great Abaco Island and to Grand Bahama. The massive storm began to slow down considerably to about 1 mile per hour, if not totally stationary at times. Now, at this time, the storm was seemingly staring at the eastern coast of Florida while lashing the Bahamas for upwards of 36 hours. By September 3rd, Durian began to move north, but it was far too late for the northwestern Bahamas. The death toll is still climbing, and thousands of people are still missing as the powerful storm brought incredible storm surge as high as 20 to 25 feet in some spots. Damage costs have already surpassed $7 billion in the Bahamas. Over the next few days, Durian weakened significantly as it began to pick up speed along the eastern coast of Florida and bringing significant rainfall to South Carolina as a Category 3 hurricane. On Friday, September 6th at 8:35 in the morning, Durian made landfall over Cape Hatteras, North Carolina as a Category 1 hurricane with maximum sustained winds at 90 miles per hour. This all took about 15 minutes before Durian pushed toward the northeast and toward Canada. For the people of the Bahamas, their lives will never be the same as thousands of families struggle to literally pick up the pieces and recover. We've included a link in the description box below for how you can help the people of the Bahamas as storm cleanup continues. In the MyRadar studios in Orlando, Florida, I'm meteorologist Mike Linden.
On September 1st, Hurricane Dorian's cataclysmic storm surge swallowed up this postcard in paradise, drawing a line in the sand between a changing climate and island living. And most Bahamians will tell you it's become a deal with the devil to live here.
I was actually fighting right here with the door, to let the pressure out so that the roof doesn't go in.
Brendan Archer was making his own deal to ride out the storm in the hopes he'd have a home once it was all over.
After the pressure came so hard, your ears start to ring, you just try and loose, the door just slammed shut, and then you just plop, everything just started going up.
And the deal paid off. Barely.
The ceiling in here was doing a roller coaster, just up and down, up and down.
Luck and topography would spare his home from Dorian's worst.
I already cleaned up this house, so now it's just now getting materials, finding ways of what I could do to make a couple dollars to help patch things up until things start to fall in line. That's the Bahamian spirit, we're strong. I born here, I ain't going nowhere. My family was here from 1700s. That's way back. And we still have the Archer title from then till now. So I ain't got nowhere to go.
The 25-foot storm surge that fell short of Linden's home on a hill devastated the neighborhood below. The Mud was a shanty town built on top of an old lake that flooded into a mountain of mud. It was the most vulnerable spot to ride out the storm, and it's where most of the people died.
You're coming into the ground zero of Hurricane Durian.
Wayne Neely is a Bahamian meteorologist who's written 14 books on island hurricanes. He's considered the foremost hurricane hunter in this part of the world. He's come to Marsh Harbor to hunt down Durian's DNA.
As we walk through this, you hear the crunch. There's a stench here that smells
It's
like...
unmistakable, yes.
It smells like death.
Yes, it is. And it's from dead bodies. You also have dead animals, the dogs, the cats. There was no match because they couldn't go anywhere. This area was flooded, it was engulfed in water.
After 30 years of covering hundreds of storms, Wayne knew this hurricane would be different. Durian's lethal storm surge charged several miles inland. So when the storm arrived, he felt as if he was carrying the weight of the nation on his shoulders, delivering a catastrophic forecast to his country, his friends, and his family.
I knew what comes along with that, a Category 5 hurricane, one of the strongest the region has ever seen, and the strongest the Bahamas has ever seen. And I knew that beneath that storm, beneath that image, there was going to be great devastation in my country. I knew then that the death toll is going to be significant.
Beneath the devastation and heartbreak, Wayne looks for Durian's atmospheric paper trail. The intense tornado-like debris and nuclear bomb landscape is unmistakable. Cat 5 storm signatures are like no other. Wayne's post-hurricane analysis is invaluable. He carefully captures it all, tracing Durian's steps and peeling away the layers.
There was very little wind shear occurring with the storm to weaken the storm. The waters were extremely warm. It was warmer than normal. I expected it to be a strong storm, but I'd never expect it to be a Category 5 intensity storm. I don't think no one did.
Durian would deliver a series of surprises leading up to landfall. First, it threaded a needle between mountainous Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, keeping its lethal core intact and over warm water for days. The eye would then recenter about 75 miles north, making forecast tracks even less reliable. Long-range computer models use satellite data, but that's limited and data poor. So when a hurricane is far from land, getting accurate tracks is harder, especially when there's been a significant shift in the hurricane. But there would be one more surprise: the weakest link in tropical forecasting, hurricane intensity. Durian rapidly intensified from 150 miles an hour to an explosive 185 miles an hour in just 9 hours, a rate never seen before in an Atlantic storm this powerful. Those 185 mile per hour winds, equivalent to a 10-mile wide EF3 tornado. It bulldozed huge swaths of Abaco and Grand Bahama Islands. Durian's wall of water reached miles beyond the mud. Wayne arrives at this Anglican church in Abaco, a designated evacuation center. Durian rushed through these walls with a 5-foot storm surge.
It must have been terrifying for them. Imagine that for 30 hours battling the storm, battling the water up to waist level, and you also had the winds, the torrential rainfall along with that, so that must have been terror for them.
That torrential rain became another one of Durian's deadly signatures. Estimates put rain totals over 35 inches. And the forecast would become a real nail-biter as the Bermuda high that was steering Durian shifted east, collapsing the steering wheel.
And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. It is June 1st, 2020. You know what that means. It is the first day, the inaugural day of the 2020 hurricane season. I'm Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson. Over the next 5 days, we're going to be joining you live right now in the app across the social media platforms to get you guys informed and keep you safe as we navigate the storm. Please join me in welcoming meteorologist Mike Linden and meteorologist Stefanie Lauber.
And we are coming to you live from the beautiful Inn at Cocoa Beach here in beautiful Cocoa Beach, Florida. Maybe not the prettiest of beach days, but here we go as we get started on hurricane season. So be sure to follow us on social media today and throughout the season. We are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're everywhere.
And we're also on YouTube, so follow us there. And if you're not subscribed already, now's a great time. Hit the notification bell so you'll know every time we drop a new video or we're live.
And as we know, you guys, it's already been busy even before the season starts. We've already two named storms, and we're tracking something today. So we already had Arthur and Bertha. Let's take a look at the infrared imagery. We're going to start off with a big picture, and we're watching an area of disturbed weather that's in Central America right now. Now, this was the remnants of Amanda that was in the Pacific. Now, it has moved over land. However, the National Hurricane Center is giving us about an 80 to 90% chance that this area of low pressure that's over Central America could reemerge into the Bay of Campeche and become our named storm in the Atlantic Basin. And our next storm would be Cristobal. So this is over the next 5 days. You can see a lot of the thunderstorms are displaced to the north and to the east of the center, and there's also storms displaced to the south of the center of that area of low pressure. But the Hurricane Center is monitoring this. We know it's going to be an active season. Mike, we know that there's going to be above average numbers over these next 6 months.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we already have started with names in May. Here now the 1st of June, as the season started today. But again, already 2 names crossed off the list. The NHC forecasting for that above normal hurricane season. And as far as what you can expect out of the season from the NHC, 13 to 19 named storms are expected, along with 6 to 10 hurricanes and 3 to 6 major hurricanes. So that's category 3 and above.
And did you guys know that the deadliest part of the storm, a lot of people don't know this, is actually not the winds. It's actually the freshwater flooding. So just about a week ago, you guys, I sat down with one of the senior forecasters at the National Hurricane Center, and he had a lot to tell me and tell you about how you can get ready for the season, including the spaghetti models. Now, everybody uses those. We see those trending on social media all the time over these next 6 months. But take a listen to what he has to say, you guys. It's really interesting, and he could help you stay ahead of the storm.
It would seem after every hurricane season, the lessons learned can form faster than tropical rains.
We're always trying to learn from the forecast that we make in terms of, how could we handle situations better? How could the forecast be better? The wind gets so much attention in hurricanes. Everybody wants to know what the wind speed is, but in reality, it's the water from storm surge and from freshwater flooding that kills the vast majority of people.
Dr. Michael Brennan has been chasing hurricanes as a senior forecaster at the National Hurricane Center for nearly 20 years, and he's learned many lessons.
We've had a lot of powerful storms, especially near Florida the last few years, and you have to prepare as if you're going to be affected every season. Everybody understands the category 1 through 5, but the problem is they try to tie the wind category to the impacts from the other hazards.
So the National Hurricane Center is changing its tune, or specifically its message, focusing less on wind and more on storm surge and water hazards like freshwater flooding that are the #1 killers during these storms.
The impact from wind is sort of the same everywhere. A category 3 hurricane is going to kind of do the same kind of damage in one place as it will in another. But from a water perspective, the relative risk and the impact of different types of storm surge inundation or different types of rainfall can really vary pretty substantially within a short distance. So it's hard to really categorize that easily with one number for the storm if you were even going to try to categorize those hazards that way. So we're trying to focus on the hazards individually and convey the risk, because the risk can be very different in different places from the same storm at the same time.
The fingerprints from a Category 5 hurricane like Hurricane Durian are unmistakable. With a storm surge swelling above 20 feet and winds estimated over 170 miles an hour, the damage is permanent, lasting for generations. Just a year earlier, Category 5 Hurricane Michael permanently changed Mexico Beach in the Florida Panhandle. Michael was the first Category 5 hurricane to strike the continental U.S. since Hurricane Andrew in 1992, some 26 years earlier. But it's the laborious, snail-crawling storms that often catch most people off guard, creating the most damage and leaving the most victims in its wake. In 2018, Hurricane Florence made landfall near Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina as a Category 1 hurricane. But the large, sluggish hurricane created massive flooding in just 2 days, killing 51 people between North and South Carolina, causing more than $17 billion in damage. Experts called it a 1 in 500-year flood event, and most people in Florence's path never expected what it would leave behind.
And the freshwater flooding can be a real big impact from any storm, even if it's not very strong anymore. The rainfall impacts can occur in that stage and hundreds of miles away from where a storm makes landfall.
Hurricane Harvey slammed into the Texas coast on August of 2017. It tied with Hurricane Katrina for the costliest tropical cyclone on record, with over $125 billion in damage and killing at least 107 people. In just a matter of days, Harvey dumped over 40 inches of rain in the metro Houston area and up to 60 inches of rain in Nederland, Texas. More than 30,000 homes were destroyed, and more than 17,000 people were rescued during Harvey's reign. The unprecedented hurricane seasons over the last several years has prompted storm chasers and armchair meteorologists to flock to social media with forecasts and predictions that are often very different from the official forecast the National Hurricane Center puts out. This type of mixed messaging can cause inaccurate information to spread like wildfire and start dangerous trends on social media. The National Hurricane Center says popular spaghetti models that you'll see trending on social media are among the most misleading and therefore can be the most dangerous.
You know, they can be problematic because to the untrained eye, there can be lots of lines on there. You don't know if the lines you're looking at are models that are typically good or models that might just be there because they're legacy models and they're not anything that the Hurricane Center looks at anymore. NHC, we're there to make sense of all the models, make the best forecast we can. And in general, our forecast beats that of any individual model and is more consistent. So look at that NHC forecast, the information that comes from that, the watches and warnings, the hazard information, and put your focus on that and don't worry quite as much about what the models are doing from cycle to cycle.
Focusing on reliable, life-saving information is critical during hurricane season. That messaging starts with the National Hurricane Center, but it's your local National Weather Service that helps facilitate the direct impacts to you and your community and to help navigate you during a storm.
We've been through this over the last 5 years. A lot of areas have been hit by hurricanes. They've been under threat of hurricanes. And I think people now have a general sense of the steps that they need to take in order to prepare. We've seen what happens with these big hurricanes. Michael in the Panhandle. We saw what Irma did in Florida. Harvey in Texas. There's a lot of these storms that are going to conjure up memories of a lot of destruction. So I think folks really have a good understanding now of what these storms can do.
And experts will tell you it's often fear or raw emotion that will get people to act during a landfalling storm. But it's also the biggest challenge forecasters face every hurricane season.
You take a step back and you look at the overall picture, what happened, what did we do, and what can we do better? There's always ways that we can improve. And one of the biggest ones recently has been on the communications. How do you communicate these hazards to the general public in a way that makes them take it seriously and take action? That has been one of the most difficult parts of communicating risk, of communicating weather hazards, as I'm sure you know, to the general public to actually get them to take action to save their lives and property when these big hurricanes come their way.
The reality is, if you live in a coastal state, and even if you don't, there's a good chance at some point you will have either direct or indirect impacts from a storm. The bottom line is, will you be ready?
You know, the main message is that much of the United States, Gulf Coast, all the Gulf Coast, and all of the East Coast are susceptible to hurricane impacts, regardless of future climate scenarios. They've been hit by hurricanes before; they're going to be hit by hurricanes again, and everybody in those areas has to be prepared.
Stand by.
You know, it's amazing to see some of the challenges that the National Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service face every year. We talk about this ourselves, how we try to get people to listen, but that is their daily challenge when they have these Category 3, 4, and 5 hurricanes barreling down on them.
Yeah, you certainly have this thought that some people think that, oh, we've done this, been there, done this before, and think, oh, we made it through this one, so we should be good for the future ones.
And something that helps with that is having a plan in place already. If you already know what you're going to do, what your go, no-go criteria is, you'll be set to go. That decision will be very easy for you. So part of the planning process that starts today, everybody knows, getting your kit ready. I was doing that last week, so if you don't know what goes in there, you're about to find out. We got some good tips for some things that people might forget coming up. Hey guys, meteorologist Stefanie Lauber here with some tips for your hurricane preparedness kit. Of course, you know that you need some non-perishable items. Those are some that you can throw in a tote, a book bag, a box, and forget about for the entirety of hurricane season. If it doesn't meet that criteria, it's probably not a good candidate to include in your kit. But with many non-perishable food items, the number one thing that you will need is a can opener to get into those cans. Not all of them are self-opening cans, so make sure you have one of these on hand, a manual can opener that doesn't require any batteries or power. Something else you'll need in the kit is enough water for you and your family, but that doesn't mean you have to go and buy gallons upon gallons of water jugs or cases of water bottles. Here's a more eco-friendly tip. If you have these tumblers sitting around the house, you can just fill these up with potable water before the storm and they'll be ready to go in your kit. Something else that's good for the storm is, of course, to have a Noaa weather radio and a flashlight in case the power goes out. So make sure that the batteries are fresh in those items and then you have some backups on hand. And with that, make sure your matches are also ready to go for cooking when the power goes out. And the last tip is to check your first aid kit and make sure the ointments and medications inside are not expired and that you have plenty of them. With these tips in mind, you'll be ready to go on the first day of hurricane season. You know, as being meteorologists, we have to get prepared early because we've got to be ready for the hurricane season. I know we all have our kits ready. What are some of the go-to items that you guys have that you can't live without?
For me, it's got to be dog food. I mean, I'm not living on the dog food, but I mean, I have 2 dogs, and it's easy to kind of overlook even the pets that you see every single day. I mean, you got to have something for them, too. Something for me that I love to do every year is grab the little LED lights that you can find at the dollar store because you can never have enough light when the power goes out. You're so used to it, you miss it when it's gone, and you can get them for $1. So it's a great find. Just go through and grab a couple. Yeah, cell phone power bank. Great idea to have one of those, too. Make sure that's fully charged. You can use the app, too, which will send out alerts, notifications, everything to you. And I have a 2-year-old at home and a coloring book, just something to keep her busy because if we lose power, it's going to be tough. Yeah, and another big thing, because my kids are teenagers, or just turned teenagers, but they love to eat. So make sure that if you have a barbecue, right? If you have a barbecue grill, that you have. So ours has a little stovetop on it. And last time we lost power, I forgot to buy a bunch of canned foods that we can cook, like SpaghettiOs, soups. So make sure you stock up on that stuff. That really comes in handy, and the kids love it. And you know, now is the perfect time, you guys, because states across the country will give you a week to stock up on your supplies tax-free, and you can save some really big money. You can get generators, kerosene lamps, high-dollar ticket items, $700, $800, depends on your state and the exemptions that you have. But there is a list, and we've got it for you right now. Make sure that you stock up. This is the week to get stocked up and ready to roll.
Among all the other things that you need to get ready for hurricane season is buy your supplies. Well, you can get this, you guys, water at these home improvement stores, and you can even stock up on this toilet tissue. There's a whole list of items that are tax-free. Let's go find out what you can get. If you've been putting off getting ready for hurricane season, now could be the time to get a jump start and save money. Many states offer a sales tax holiday week, and these items are up for grabs, tax exempt. You can save big money by purchasing a generator. In the state of Florida, the generator must cost less than $750 to be exempt. So make sure you check in with your state's guidelines for rules and restrictions. You'll need some gas for that generator, so make sure you get containers. They won't be taxed either. Flashlights, lanterns, and candles are also all tax-free, and you can never have enough of these. All double, triple, C, D, as well as 6-volt and 9-volt batteries are all tax exempt. Tarps, plastic sheeting, and drop cloths also make the list. You'll want to make sure you stock up on ground anchoring systems like this as well, and bungee cords and straps. Weather radios also make the cut. And finally, canned foods, non-perishable foods, prescription medicines, baby foods, and first aid kits are also tax-free. Most states give you several days to stock up on these supplies, giving you plenty of time to get ready before a storm hits.
Yeah, you can really save a considerable amount of money there. Probably a good time to stock up when the time comes. But before we go, let's take a look at our current conditions of what the tropics are still looking like and what we could see in the coming days. So, looking now at the Gulf of Mexico, a little active to say the very least there. That is what is left of Amanda, the remnant of it that could potentially, Stefanie, what is it, 80% now from the NHC as far as the development?
Here. Those warm waters there in the Bay of Campeche, you normally, when these systems try to approach Central America, the terrain there just tears it apart, and that's what's happened with Amanda so far. It's not a surprise to see Amanda because the Eastern Pacific, anywhere along the west coast out to the international date line, their season actually starts in May. It starts a little earlier. But to see it cross over this rough terrain and then reemerge, and we have the potential for another storm, that's what makes this all the more interesting. So if it does, then it gets its next name for our basin, which would be Cristobal.
Right.
So, you know, a lot to watch for here.
It's wild that, again, it is June 1st. Today is the official start to the season, but we've already crossed 2 names off the list. Off and rolling already.
Yeah, and so, especially with this week, we want to do what we can to keep you guys prepared. If you have questions, don't be shy. Send them on down. You can drop them in the comments right now. You can drop them on our social media channels. We will be answering your questions during the last day of this 5-part series at noon Eastern Time on Fridays. So don't be shy. You can send them into an email as well. That's myradarwx@myradar.com.
And coming up tomorrow, live on MyRadar across all of the social media channels, as Stefanie mentioned, it is day 2 of our special hurricane series, Navigating the Storm.
Yeah, and we just want to make sure that everyone tunes in. We got on a little late today, but you should get a notification, especially on YouTube or Facebook, depending on where you're following us. We really would love for you to join in. We've worked really hard on this behind the scenes, in front of the camera too, to try and give you as much information as we can over these next 5 days. And if we don't answer your question, if we don't see it, but we're being really good, for some reason we will go back on social media, answer those questions for you guys to make sure that you get them answered. We do have several questions we're going to answer. That again is on Friday. We'll be devoting the whole live broadcast just to answering those questions. But before we leave, we wanted to thank again the gracious hosts here at the Inn at Cocoa Beach, you guys. It's simply a spectacular view behind us. Gorgeous beach day, perfect weather. Folks practicing the safe social distancing kinda out there. But again, a big thank you to the staff here at the Inn at Cocoa Beach. Has been so welcoming to us. And to our behind the scene guys, we got to thank Fern and also Damien and Chandler, who are all here, and Matt back at the station, and John, who are handling things for us. We really hope that you guys enjoy us. And thank you so much. We hope we are helping you navigate the storm this hurricane season.